Foxborough stung, no question. But sometimes a hit like that is exactly what sharpens a team. And today feels like one of those days that tells you where the Chargers really are right now. There's one move on the table that could keep this defense feeling like the same group we leaned on all season. There's trade talk that, if it ever turns into something real, could stop Justin Herbert from constantly dealing with trouble right up the middle. There's a draft path that sounds clean on paper, until you replay how we actually lost to New England. And then there's a behind-the-scenes twist that could throw sand in the gears of the best offensive idea we've had in a while before it even gets going. Take a second. Are you buying the plan, or does it feel like there's a catch? Because when you build something legit in this league, the rest of the NFL notices. That's the downside of having one of the best defenses in football in 2025. We weren't just solid. We had an identity. The kind of unit where quarterbacks look up and realize the easy throws are gone, the checkdowns aren't free, and third and long feels like you're running into a wall. Then the predictable part happens. Jesse Minter lands a head coaching job in Baltimore. Totally makes sense. A staff gets picked apart when you're that good. But the response is the real story. And it's the type of response that looks quiet until you realize it can shape your ceiling. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Chargers have requested to interview Ravens defensive coordinator Zach Orr for the open coordinator job. And yeah, the irony is right there. Minter goes to Baltimore, and now we're asking to talk with one of Baltimore's guys as a potential replacement. Still, it's not just some random name pull. Orr previously worked alongside Minter with the Chargers. That matters. That's continuity. Same language, same teaching points, the kind of shared background that doesn't require a full off-season just to get everyone speaking the same dialect. And honestly, that's the part that usually worries you when a coordinator walks. It's not simply new playbook. It's timing, communication, the little pre-snap details that make a defense play fast. Because if you're thinking in week 3 instead of reacting in week 3, that hesitation turns into easy first downs. It adds up quick. Now, the part that's going to light up the comments. Baltimore's defense wasn't dominant in 2025. They were around the middle of the league in yards and points allowed, and the number that's hard to ignore is the pass rush. 30 sacks in the regular season, tied for 30th. That's rough. That's the kind of thing that makes fans immediately ask, wait, are we sure? But defense swings from year to year. Personnel shifts. Injuries hit. Sometimes you're trying to generate pressure without the pieces you need. Just looking at it from the outside, it doesn't really read like Orr was the only reason Baltimore slid. From the Chargers' angle, the key is this. They know Orr in a way most teams don't. If they're pushing to interview him, it's because they think he can keep what worked in place and address what didn't. And if the offense is about to shift its personality, do you really want the defense learning a whole new system at the same time? Or do you want one side of the ball steady while you chase upside on the other? Which brings us right into the nerve ending of this offseason. Keeping Justin Herbert clean. Because while we're talking identity and continuity, every Chargers fan watched 2025 and felt it. Herbert took too much heat. Not because he can't handle pressure. Not because guys didn't compete. It was the interior protection getting shaky. And once that happens, everything on offense gets squeezed. The playbook shrinks. The timing changes. You start playing not to lose instead of playing to win. So when a name gets floated that directly addresses that issue, it's not something you can just wave away. Fansided's Justin Carter suggested the Chargers could pursue a trade for Saints offensive lineman Cesar Ruiz. And before anyone groans, just stay with me. Ruiz graded as PFF's 13th best pass-blocking guard last season. That's a real number, with real meaning. It's the profile of a player who makes life easier for a quarterback every single snap. Yes, he struggled as a run blocker. Yes. But context matters. New Orleans was uneven, the line was stressed, and Ruiz still held up in protection. And with the possibility of an offense that lives on rhythm, quick reads, and attacking the middle of the field, clean protection isn't a luxury. It's the foundation. Now flip it to the Saints side. They've jump-started a rebuild with rookie quarterback Tyler Show, and that changes the vibe, but it doesn't change the priorities. The future still outweighs the present there. Ruiz also costs money. Trading him after June 1 could save New Orleans about $9.5 million in cap space. If you're trying to stock draft capital and think a couple years down the road, that kind of savings can look very attractive. For the Chargers, it's a move that helps without forcing you to bet everything on the draft. And I know the counter already. Wasn't the line good before injuries? Yeah, it was. But football doesn't care about before. Rashawn Slater went down before the season even started. Joe Alt went down mid-season. Then the interior turned into a week-to-week patch job. When that happens, the offense gets predictable. It gets conservative. Herbert ends up managing chaos instead of hunting chunk plays. Ruiz isn't some magic fix, but he's stability. He's the kind of player who lets the center breathe, lets tackles trust what they're seeing, and gives the quarterback a little more comfort in the pocket. And in the NFL, that little becomes the difference between 3rd and 8 turning into a conversion or turning into a throwaway. Of course, it only works if the price is right. A mid-round pick feels like the range where both sides can live with it. Nothing reckless. But picture a healthier line, a steadier interior, a play caller who doesn't have to shrink the menu, and Herbert punishing blitz the way he's supposed to. You can see how that starts to change the feel of Sundays. Keep that in your head, because the draft projection making the rounds could pull the Chargers in the opposite direction. There's a certain kind of mock draft pick that looks reasonable until you remember how the wildcard loss actually played out. When things tightened up, the offensive line struggled, and it didn't take long for the whole game to tilt. So then you see Mel Kiper Jr.'s first mock of the year, and he has the Chargers taking a defensive tackle at number 22 overall, Clemson's Peter Woods. And you already know what's coming. Part of the fan base is going to love it, saying, "Yes, give us more disruption up front," while the other part is going to say, "We're really not prioritizing Herbert again?" This is a real debate because Woods isn't just some filler name. He looked like a top 10 pick heading into the season. Big, strong, versatile, a 3-tech who can wreck a game plan when he's right. Kiper's logic is basically, if you're outside the top 20 and that kind of talent is sitting there, you take it. Especially when you might need a replacement for a free agent like Teair Tart. But you can't ignore the other side of it. Woods' production dipped in 2025. Fewer solo tackles, fewer tackles for loss, fewer sacks than 2024. And even if you don't treat PFF grades like the final word, the drop is real. His overall defensive grade fell from 87.2 to 72.9. That doesn't mean he can't be great. It means he's risk. And risk in round 1 hits differently when your quarterback is the most important piece in the building. Meanwhile, the Chargers' reality is complicated. The superstar tackles are expected back healthy, which matters a ton, but the interior is where the uncertainty lives. Zion Johnson and a group of swing backups who were forced into starting roles are headed toward free agency. The roster math brings hard decisions, cuts, fit questions, all of it. And if the interior stays shaky, it doesn't matter how good your tackles are. Pressure up the A-gap and B-gap ruins your timing. It kills the deep shots. It messes with red zone execution. It turns every drive into a grind. And it's not like there aren't offensive line options that feel cleaner early. Penn State guard Olavavega Ioane is the perfect example. He hasn't allowed a sack since 2023. That's the kind of stat that makes fans sit up straight, because it speaks the language we actually care about. Keep Herbert upright. So the question is simple and painful. Do you take the pick that looks smart on draft night? Or do you take the pick that directly addresses what hurt you most? And before you lock in your stance, there's one more twist today that could change how you see the entire offensive conversation. For a few days, the vibe around the Chargers felt like one of those moments where everyone's already imagining the next step. A lot of people were picturing Mike McDaniel running the offense. Tempo, creativity, forcing defenses to defend the whole field. Then the NFL does what it always does when something feels too clean. It hits the brakes. Early Friday morning, Diana Rossini reported that McDaniel was meeting with the Buffalo Bills about their head coaching opening as a potential replacement for Sean McDermott. And Bolt fam, you can't shrug that off. When the coach you're expecting to run your offense is in a head coaching race, the situation shifts. It's not just play calling, it's vision, it's control. It's the stability you're trying to build in a locker room that's ready to make a real push. Normally, when stuff like this hits the timeline, the deal is basically waiting on ink, and everything else is procedure. But the NFL isn't always tidy. Players pivot after agreeing to terms. Coaches can pivot too. Buffalo is a real job. Josh Allen, a roster built to compete, and a situation where a coach can win quickly. If you're McDaniel, you listen. You have to. At the same time, the context favors the Chargers. They've halted their offensive coordinator search. That's not an accident. That reads like confidence, like they believe he's their guy unless he lands one of the head coaching openings still out there. And if we're playing the guessing game, Buffalo could also lean towards someone like Brian Daboll because of his history with Josh Allen and that offense. That doesn't erase the risk, but it changes the shape of it. Still, nothing is over until it's over. Until it's actually finalized, there's that tension sitting in the background, the "what if this goes sideways" feeling. And if it does go sideways, the ripple is real. The line conversation changes. The draft conversation changes. The entire identity of the offense gets pushed back into question. Suddenly you're not asking, how do we level up? You're asking, who's steering this thing now? So when you zoom out, today is a perfect snapshot. The Chargers are good enough to get targeted, and good enough that every decision has weight. The possible defensive continuity, the trade talk to help Herbert, the tug-of-war between draft value and immediate need, and the uncertainty around who ends up running the offense. This is a franchise right on the edge of a jump. Nothing is simple. Nothing is guaranteed. And that's exactly why this moment matters. Now I want it from you. What part of this has you the most on edge? Are you all in on the Orr interview idea? Would you pull the trigger on a Ruiz trade if the price is right? Are you taking Peter Woods at 22? Or are you pounding the table for offensive line? Drop your take in the comments, hit like if you're riding with the Bolts, and make sure you're subscribed, because this offseason is going to get loud.